Well, where I want to start is this, is in kind of an extension of what the morning show was talking about, as I thought they had a really, really interesting idea about, okay, let's look at that championship game. Let's look at the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Yesterday, Lorenzo Neal, shout out to him, was here celebrating with us for 4 hours. Oh, my gosh, he was on fire. The Gooster. That one's not going to die, by the way.
I told the wife, call me the Gooster.
That was not going to die. But, okay, let's take a step back now. Let's talk about the things that we love from that game, the things that made us concerned, the things that might have us, with the blanket over our eyes at halftime, wondering what's going to happen for the rest of this game. How are people feeling about the good, the bad, the ugly? Shout out Clint Eastwood on that NFC Championship game.
All right, can I start with the good?
Where do you want to start?
Okay, yeah, the good.
Let's start with the positive.
The positive, Evan, and Niner fans, and I mean this to the core, is you've taught me a word. You brought it back up, Evan, last week about the Niners, and you didn't say they were, but most of their season played out this way, and you called them front runners. And when you look at Kyle's record that had been 0-30 going in the fourth quarter down 7 or more, Evan, I really thought that was a crutch. And hater, non-hater, whatever you wanted to do, that didn't help Brock Purdy in his profile. But he is the quarterback of this team. And the fact that you're telling me on the biggest stage, win or go home, the Niners come back from 17 points. Brock needed that. Obviously, Evan, I'm not telling you and the fans this is how they drew it up. But the fact that they were able to come back from a 17-point halftime lead and win that game in the fashion they did, going into this finale, the Super Bowl, I don't think you could really ask, how did you want it to play out that would give the Niners more confidence than they have now to know, we don't want to get behind. That's what we want to show up. But the fact that you know now that, you know what, Evan, we can, I think that's the good. That I just do.
I'm with you. I completely agree wholeheartedly that confidence right now for the 49ers is something that they earned in the last 2 games. But from what I heard after the game on Inside the NFL from George Kittle, I don't know if you peeped this, Scoo, it felt like that had been there the whole time. Even though we saw it, we saw it lay out in front of our very eyes. We saw it manifest itself for a 17-point comeback. It kind of had already been brewing. And here's what I'm talking about, because George Kittle, I think, put it at the forefront.
I can't wait at the end of the game. I'm going to say, hey, they had us in the first half, not going to lie. I can't wait till after the game, and I got to say, you know what, they had us in the first half. Keep singing it, have fun, encourage you guys, right? You're the guy.
Now, that was George Kittle mic'd up during the NFC Championship game, and what he was saying about, I can't wait to tell everyone at the podium, which he did, taking the George Halas Trophy, talking to Michael Strahan, which he did at the podium post-game, which he did in the locker room with all the reporters surrounding him. I can't wait to tell everyone that they had us in the first half. And, of course, that's a famous meme going back to, I think, maybe even like Vine days.
Okay.
But this idea that the Niners, and specifically George Kittle, never felt like they were out of that football game, to me points to what you're talking about. The mettle, the experience, the championship pedigree, though they don't have a Super Bowl, they've been in these positions before, and it showed up.
No doubt. And I hadn't heard that, so thanks for sharing that. And also, I go to what Brock Purdy said. Kyle didn't come in and flip a spread. Lowe kind of laid out, what actually goes down, at halftime, Evan, because I'm thinking it's just, one guy talking to 53 or 52, but it's not that. You break up in groups, but Purdy said he knew he could play better. That's what he was focused on. Nobody got out of their character, and to come back, and you echoed this home yesterday, not just run them down, Evan, with the 30 seconds left to kick a game-winning field goal. They ran them down in the third into where they were up 10 points in the fourth. So that was the good to me.
Well, exactly. It was a tidal wave. Like, it was an absolute avalanche.
Tsunami.
And I think that should give people confidence, even going into the Super Bowl, but also just about the Niners in general. Like, to me, and it kind of applies it to some of the bad and the ugly, so I want to tease that a little bit, but to me, this is an offense-first team. This is an offensively driven football team that can flip the script. I know they forced the fumble, and that credit to the defense for making the biggest turnover of the game. Armstead falling on top of it. I believe it was Gibson that forced that fumble on the first carry. They're out of the second drive for the Lions. But this team offensively can put up points in a hurry. And that's not something that they could do in prior years. I think it has to do with Brock Purdy being at the helm. I think it has to do with Christian McCaffrey being in the backfield, and I think it has to do with the amount of playmakers they have at their disposal, with Deebo Samuel now being as close to 100% as possible. So if we're looking at the good, it's that I don't think they're ever out of a football game because of their offense, because they can score as they did in the third quarter, 17 points to make it an even football game.
When you say that, Evan, you got me thinking, because obviously you touched on it. The season didn't have too many, opportunities to where we saw the Niners down, except the 3-game losing streak, and we know how that went. My point is, do you think that was a myth or a fluke now? Because, again, it comes down to weaponry, capability, but I never looked at the Niners. It's just me. They're like vampires. If they're down 10, they can't do it, especially when we know before kickoff, when you look at this roster, especially on the offensive side, all that weaponry, it is kind of funny that had legs. And that record was 0-30. And I know that was pre-Purdy, pre-C-Mac, but it's just a Kyle Shanahan coach team. I thought that was more of the UPS package of that stat, right or wrong, was more of a Kyle stat. So they did, it was the best time to kind of dispel that myth, because, Evan, Green Bay had me, it ain't over. But this Sunday night, down 17, I thought it was over, man. I'm going to be real. I know you didn't. You and I were kind of, I need to see more. Lowe was pretty passionate about it. He thought it was over. But, I mean, they picked a hell of a time for it to be the good and come back, and now they're playing one of two teams left.
Yeah, and I don't want to sit up here and act like at halftime I was the rah-rah guy saying, oh, this game, they got this, or they'll come back, or I think they're going to win. Like, I was as close to saying the game was over as possible. The only thing that prevented it was the fact that the game wasn't over.
Right.
Like, we hadn't seen the clock hit 0, but I think coming out of the second, maybe it's because they got the ball and had a chance to go and score, and then you never know what happens.
Kyle took 3, which is that was a big, he took 3.
And on that drive, Juwan Jennings, one-handed catch to keep the drive going. So if they had come out and gone 3 and out, or come out and came away with no points, I probably would have been saying it's over, because the Lions were just absolutely rolling. And that could be part of where you're feeling concerned, too. So 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings in for Matt Steinmetz. Will be back tomorrow, along with Daryl the Guru Johnson. What were your good, bad, and ugly takeaways from the NFC Championship game? Why are you feeling like you're sitting on a high? Why are you feeling like you might be a little bit apprehensive? And what makes you feel like, if you're there, that the Niners got lucky, that they were fortunate? I tend to lean towards, if you come from behind 17 points, Goo, it does take 2 to tango. You need a team to collapse. You also need a team to come back. And so if you're splitting that 50-50, if you feel 75-25, however you're feeling, want to hear from you at 888-957-9570. The other thing that I thought was really good about the NFC Championship, of course, in addition to the comeback, was what you talked about, like looking at Kyle Shanahan and the way that he approaches those sort of in-game decisions. We'd always had a little bit of a question mark, right? Because that stat you just mentioned, hadn't come back.
That's a hell of a stat.
Hadn't come back 0-30 or 0-29 when trailing by 5 or more points in the fourth quarter. And Steph, there you go. Give you 3. So does Brock Purdy now being the quarterback make you feel like that stat doesn't apply anymore? I know they only got 1. His record is still 1 and a lot. But did that flip the way that you look at this 49ers team as comeback kids? Are they still front runners? Like, did that change the equation? Did that change the math at all in your mind?
It does. And again, I'm not telling you and anybody listening that Brock Purdy is Peyton Manning. I'm not saying he can't get to those heights. I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes. But Evan, you get something. You get a reward of, if I see the Niners down, and maybe this is just what I think of the team as a whole, and I was still shocked that Green Bay had them down. I was still shocked that they were down. I thought Detroit was going to be in trouble, and it didn't happen. But I have to give credit where credit is due, and Brock Purdy was the quarterback that didn't turtle up, that took that shot downfield to Ayuk, that got the good fortune, and how can I come in here now not being a homer, because I'm not a Niner fan? I'm from the Bay. I want the Niners to do good. But how can I rob the quarterback, if his name was Tom Thumb, of coming back in 2 games, 2 playoff games, where you were favored and the pressure of the world is on your shoulders? How can I now say in 2 weeks, and again, Evan, they don't want to be down, but But if they're down 10, Brock has done something where he's shown the world, I can quarterback this team back, keep composure. Now, obviously, you don't want to play with fire because you know what? You get burnt. But, Evan, to your question, I'm not being a front runner. I'm being real. You get something for that. And I do want to say yes to answer your question that now, if I see the Niners in that situation, I think until the clock strikes 0 and they don't have enough points, how could I be fair and real if I said nothing's changed?
And it's not like they're going to win all of those games.
No doubt.
But you're right. I think the confidence or the level of it's flipped a little bit.
Man.
You finally saw it. You finally saw a game against Green Bay in which they were dead to rights.
Right.
And Brock Purdy went on a game-winning drive. You saw them dead to rights at the half against Detroit, giving up 250 yards in the first half. They were getting 9 yards of play. They were moving the ball up and down the field on that defense, which still to its and changed much.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we will get to the defense. Don't get me wrong. But I'm with you. Like I think there's a different level of apprehension in those situations now for 49er fans. Not that it's flipped completely for everyone, because, again, you've still seen, speaking of turtles, you've still seen Kyle Shanahan turtle up in specific spots. He even did it in the Green Bay game, but they overcame it. So I do wonder if the math has changed for people just because of the quarterback, because they've seen it now twice. To be fair, they were touchdown or more favorites in both of those games, and it took late comebacks for them to be in this position to play for a Super Bowl. But I'm also looking at the rest of the quarterbacks or the rest of the teams in the playoffs and what they didn't do that the Niners have done, which is Josh Allen losing at home, Lamar Jackson turtling up in the biggest game of his career.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people don't want to say it. I love Lamar Jackson. He's going to be the most valuable player this season. He outplayed Brock Purdy on his own field. But
he'll never win one in my book. But go ahead. Sorry, Evan. I had to interject. Man.
Lamar?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not willing to say that yet.
No,
but
I am. Yeah.
But he came up nothing.
Yeah.
Like that was a zero
Small
in that game. And he had an opportunity to, yes, take down the GOAT and beat Mahomes. He couldn't do it. He could not do it. And I don't know if Brock Purdy and the 49ers can do it, because it's going to be, I think, a really close football game, and we'll spend a week and a half talking about it. But the 49ers are in this position because they did what the two quarterbacks that Patrick Mahomes had to go through could not, which is get it done. They couldn't do it. Brock Purdy did that.
No doubt about it, Evan. And you got me thinking. I'm leaving the house this morning, true story, and I got the remote in hand. I'm about to turn off the TV, and at the bottom of the screen it says, random, is Brock Purdy the best quarterback left in the NFC? He's the only quarterback left in the NFC.
Exactly.
So, Evan, you're right. Nick, how can you not just give them that if you're being fair, Ev? I knocked off who was in my bracket, who was in front of me. But if I'm the last man standing in regard to QB, Ev, you got to give that to me right now. I'm the last man standing. I'm going to Vegas. I'm representing the National Football Conference. As far as quarterbacks, I just thought that was like, who would get that? Well, he's not the best. Evan is when, Evan ain't playing. Either you didn't make the playoffs, you lost. Like, I think that comes with the territory is my greater point.
I think that's fair. Like, context matters, yes. It does matter. When we look back at these football games, and it's one of the reasons why there's probably elation from 49ers fans whenever they turn this back, because they know that they were not playing well in these games. Brock Purdy didn't play well in the first half against Green Bay.
Facts.
I think you can make a case he didn't play well in the first half against Detroit, although I thought he looked a lot better. But you're right. At the end of the day, he has not lost a playoff game in which he's finished. He's 4-0 in games in which he's started and finished.
Yeah.
So this Super Bowl could potentially be the first game in which he loses that he stood upright. And we don't know, and things are going to play out and unfold, and history will be written. But this guy does bring, he just brings a level of balance and level-headedness, honestly, to that position, which we have not seen, maybe even going back to the Kaepernick days. I know Kaepernick was more dynamic. I know he had a better arm. He was a dual-threat beast of a quarterback. But I don't know if people had the same confidence that they do now, because there's just something about this guy. It's really hard to describe, but at the end of the day, and again, I kind of told this story yesterday, but when I'm looking at him after the game in the locker room, just thinking about, he's just sitting there like working on his breathing
I
exercises.
saw that video, man. Had the shirt on.
He's boring. He's down to earth. He's a God-fearing man. Like, there's nothing uniquely special about
Gucci,
him.
Right?
Maybe that makes people feel better.
Walk in Spadoni. I don't know if you guys saw the video. He had a couple bags, and then the caption was "Responsible dad getting to the airport 6 hours early," and it was like he looked and that's a good thing, Evan. But you're right. There is no sizzle. Bonte hit me last night, and I want to run this by you. And I'm trying to stay on the ranch because it's a good conversation. But when I go big picture, and I think of Kyle and Jimmy, I think Niner fans need to really step back and give Jimmy his propers. Not on his win-loss record, because if you wanted to do that, Jimmy earned it. And how many times did we hear, Jimmy just wins? But Evan, my greater point is Jimmy Garoppolo has taken this Niner team to where Brock and the Niners will be in Vegas in 2 weeks.
That's the same thing.
Jimmy's done that. And I don't want to make it about Jimmy and Brock, but the eras I do, because the luckiest thing that happened to the Niners with the Trey Lance debacle was the pick and the announcement that Brock Purdy out of Iowa State was going to be drafted to the 49ers. So, Evan, can this Niner team, led by Kyle, do something that the Jimmy Garoppolo era couldn't? And that's win a Super Bowl. So I know you talked about it and you said it well. We got a lot of time to build up and look at the game, but I just look at this like, are you telling me this kid, Brock Purdy, is about to cash it in year 2, where year 1 he kind of got knocked out, didn't get a chance to finish and lost? But Evan, it would be incredible. So a lot's at stake in regard to symbolism if Kyle can get over the hump and the team can, because I got Niner friends. Goo, when we go, we don't lose. Well, you lost 2 in a row. And you don't want it to be 3, So there is a lot at stake.
No, it's everything, man. I mean, you said it up the top. It's the Super Bowl. Like, I've never seen a city celebrate, because I live here in San Francisco. I've never seen a city celebrate a Western Conference Finals the way that they did winning the NFC Championship. I've never seen streets shut down when the Giants won a playoff series. He might have been one of the guys shooting off fireworks.
Let's hope it was fireworks.
There was a lot of people that were in the Sunset, downtown, everywhere around the city was going up because the Niners advanced to the. They didn't even win the Super Bowl. I can't imagine what this city is going to be like if they end up getting the big one.